Did you play LA Noire when it came out on console or PC?
No, but I know a lot of people that did, and I always wanted to. And then when I saw this come out, I immediately thought, darn it, I should have played it.
So this is the LA Noire VR case files, obviously in VR. It's on both PSVR and on Steam. This is essentially the LA Noire game from 2011 translated into VR, and it's done incredibly well. I was absolutely astounded by how well they had done this. It really goes to show you how well the engine from the original LA Noire holds up today, as it came out in 2011, but it still looks fantastic. The facial expressions were incredible. Everything plays really well and it's very smooth. This is probably the first AAA title. Even though Doom came out and Skyrim and all that, this is the first truly AAA port of a title to VR. My only complaint about it so far is that it has so many loading screens.
You know, when you said that you think the game holds up over time because it came out in 2011 and everything works really well in VR, I played another game that you just mentioned recently that I had very similar thoughts about, and that is Skyrim. Even though it's an old game, the port worked really well, so it's exciting to see another example of that. And some people have been thinking, oh, we're going to play the same game, but it's just going to be in VR now, like what's the big deal? Well, once you experience it, it's not like playing the same game over again. Like putting it in VR is a new experience, or at least it is for me when I play these ports, and now this one looks really interesting, just like those other ones that I played like Skyrim that have been ported over.
I would say that Skyrim is more of a true port. They just added in a VR mode and then they went ahead and here you go, right? Whereas this one is definitely designed for VR. Rockstar did an incredible job with this. It has all of the original assets and it has all the original sound files and it has all of that kind of stuff, but they took the main game mode of the third person run around, shoot 'em up, interrogate 'em up, I guess it would be. And they converted that into a VR game. And it's really, really, really cool. It's really well done. The everything is just fantastic in this game. So you do go through the original story in VR. It is that, but it's translated so well.
Well, that's nice to hear because I know that LA Noire, the original one, had a really nice story. So if they're not stepping too far away from that, it seems like it would be really good again, I guess. But at the same time, I am curious, when you say it's not a direct port, but they kept some of the assets, I mean, how different is it really, though?
They didn't keep some of the assets, they kept all of the assets. Now, in the original game, there are 21 cases, and then there's a bunch of DLC that you can get, and there's some pre-orders and all that kind of stuff. Because this game came out in the time when they would put pre-order DLC only on PS3, and some only on Xbox, and some of them only with GameStop. So there's approximately 21 different cases in the original game. In this one, you're going to play through 7 of them because they have been rebuilt for VR. So as opposed to just doing the whole game in VR, which I imagine they could do, and maybe they will do. Instead of that, you're going to play the ones that are best designed for VR.
That's okay because from what I've read, they are also offering some of the coolest missions or cases from the original, and it's not shying away from things like driving or the gunfights, like, you know, the most fun parts of the game. As long as they are including that and making you be able to experience that in VR, that still sounds really promising. So maybe what they've done is picked 7 of the 21 that not only are fit for VR the best, but also can do the most memorable things from the first game in VR. Because you know what I mean, certain parts of the game, like the cars and the shooting, those things aren't always easy to put into the same VR game. Like a lot of times if you're going to get a driving game in VR, it's just going to be a driving game. If you're going to get a shooter, it's going to be just a shooter. So it's really cool that they're taking those multiple aspects of the gameplay from the original and being able to put all of them into one game.
The thing is that if you've already played the original game and you remember it, you will also remember these cases and you will know how to complete them. So it's not necessarily designed as an add-on there. You're playing the same missions that have already been done, and if you were to try and go into this and say, oh, I'm going to have a completely unique experience, that's not true.
That's sort of what I was getting at when I asked you, like, how similar is it? So, if you're a really big fan of the game and you go into this and you play it in VR, I'm sure you're still going to have a lot of fun and it's going to be a new experience. It's going to be way more immersive than anything you've ever done before. But at the same time, does it kind of take away from it the fact that if you're a big fan and you remember exactly what you should do throughout some of these cases, does that take some of the excitement out of it? I think what I would say is perhaps I would recommend this especially to people that never played it in non-VR, but also to people that have already played it in non-VR.
It's difficult for me to say. I believe that this is designed for people who have never played LA Noire. I think that this is something that is a shorter VR version of LA Noire. It is a VR experience of LA Noire, and it is a really, really well done one. I haven't played a whole lot of games that have driving, shooting, investigations, escape the room type stuff. It's got all of that kind of gameplay that was in the first truly AAA game that came out from Rockstar. Now it's in this too. You have driving, you have shooting, you've got investigations, you have finding the evidence and driving places and checking out serial numbers and interrogating people and looking for witnesses. You've got all of that there. So it definitely feels like a full experience, and a more full experience than something that you've seen elsewhere. But at the same time, I don't think it's designed for people who have already played the game. I really don't, because you're getting less, you're getting the same.
That was my fear. Thankfully, I haven't played it yet, so haha, I get to experience it all anew when I play it. Another thing I was worried about, I'm glad you said this isn't the case. When I hear that they have driving and shooting and different types of things that you can do, just like you do in the original, I was scared that some of those things would lack, other parts of it would be stronger, and there might not be a nice balance, like the driving might be weaker than the shooting, and the interrogation might be stronger than the driving, things like that. But what you're saying is all of it seems to work pretty smoothly for the most part?
So I'm going to go through and explain a couple of things about this really quick, because I think it's important. The driving is fantastic. It's probably the best driving I've ever seen in VR. But everything in this is kind of the best I've seen in VR. It does everything really well, and it does it in smart ways. For example, if you're walking around and you see something that you want to get to, maybe you don't want to walk over to it. You click a button, you're automatically there, you see your character walk over there, and then you're there, which can be incredibly helpful with things like stairs or going around a corner that you can't quite get to, or getting into your car. Walking into the street, walking over to your car, pulling open the door, sitting down in the car, pressing, like there's too much there sometimes, so you can choose to keep it pretty quick paced by instead just teleporting over to your car instantly inside of it. That's a nice thing. If you set a destination in your notebook and you're in your car, you can just warp straight to your destination. That's a nice thing. If you're in a battle and you're sitting there moving along shooting at people, you can decide to do cover to cover movement. Your character will just run over to the cover. That's a nice thing to have. It's not something that you're going to use all the time. I found myself, for the first time, using all of the different kinds of locomotions at different times. And I was really happy that they had them all, because I could see myself walking through the alleyway looking for evidence. I wanted to move slowly. I wanted to go through and actually fine-tooth comb the whole thing, looking for the evidence. Whereas in a gun battle, I wanted to quickly get into position and take out my enemies.
That's interesting, because every time that I've played a game with multiple options for locomotion, I inevitably, after the first few minutes of playing it, get comfortable with something and I stick to that. Like, I'll know, I don't want snap movement in this game, or I don't want teleportation in this game, or maybe I do. But I always seem to pick one, and after the first little while, that's the one that I'm going to do the entire time that I play the game. But the way you're explaining the locomotion in this is that all of the different methods of moving around are viable in certain situations, and you kind of feel like you want to use all of them. I've never experienced that before. I've always had a favorite, so that sounds really interesting.
You want to use them because they provide you different tactical advantages to your gameplay. For example, I didn't want to drive this one incredibly circuitous pathway, so I pulled a little lever and I'm there. And I don't have to worry about that anymore. I like that. I'm in a gun battle and I can see where I want to go and I don't really want to have to swing my arms and get myself over there, I can click the button and I'm there, and now I have a tactical advantage in a gun battle against my enemies. Investigation of walking around looking for the shell casings on the ground. Well, I'll just walk over to them, pick them up, take a look at it, and experience it that way. There are two problems that I have with this game, and neither of them are movement-based things. One is there are way too many loading screens. This is a game from 2011 and it hasn't been graphically beefed up. It is the same graphics from 2011, but there are so many loading screens. Everything you do, you're going to get a loading screen after it. Every time. Loading screen, loading screen, loading screen, loading screen. That kind of sucks.
Yeah, it sounds like it would really break the momentum of the game, and it's kind of inexcusable to think that this game is 6 years old and they couldn't find a way to make that more seamless and the transitions to just, not require so much loading time. I hate to make the comparison to Skyrim again, but the loading times in Skyrim VR are very short in comparison to what you would get, on the PS3 or perhaps even in the remaster. Like, they're really quick. It doesn't break the momentum at all. So that is disappointing.
The other problem I have is one of gameplay mechanics. I feel like the game is designed for people who have never played it because of the story and all of that. So you go through and you have to actually experience everything that you didn't get to experience because you never played the original. However, the gameplay mechanics are clearly designed for people who have played it. For example, it does not explain interrogations well enough. I had forgotten, because I haven't played this game in 6 years, how to interrogate somebody. And so I ended up failing interrogations until I could remember how to do it. And it wasn't because the game told me how to do it. It was because I remembered how to do it. I think that is a failing in a AAA title. And I really want to make it clear, this is a AAA title. This is Rockstar producing this game. I think that the Skyrims and the Fallouts and Doom are AA titles. They are ports to VR. It's yet another Skyrim on Switch kind of occasion. I don't feel like they are truly unique experiences designed for VR. With this, I do feel like it is a unique experience that is designed for VR. And so to expect me to come into the game and have this prior knowledge of how to play the game, but at the same time give me an experience that if I've played the game before, I will not enjoy as much, it feels like there's a dissonance there.
So you're saying because this is supposed to be a new VR experience, and it's not just a simple port, that it does require a tutorial. They shouldn't be relying on the fact that you've already played the game in the non-VR mode or played the original game before they made this one. So yeah, I get what you're saying. That does make it feel as if they expect you to have played the game already, but they're also wanting you to feel like it's a brand new experience. It seems to be sort of a contradictory process. So I totally understand what you're getting at there. I mean, personally, I don't see it as being a huge issue, but I guess for you, it was something that really should have been worked out during the development stage.
I just have a difficult time figuring it out because, again, I feel like the gameplay is designed for somebody who has never played L.A. Noire, because you're going to be going through the same cases all over again. And if you're just going to give me the same cases again, then it is probably best that I have never played the game, because I won't know the solutions. I mean, even 6 years later, I still remembered some of the solutions, and that is a problem. But if you're going to create this, and so they've created a VR experience that is very cool and very different, and it's definitely not designed for people who have played the game already because it's got the story. But at the same time, they don't explain enough that I felt comfortable going through an interrogation and remembering the gameplay mechanics that are involved in that.
To be honest, you were sort of confusing me, but that's okay, because I think I understand what you're getting at. For me, the way I'm understanding this is that I think you might be overstating how much of a port this isn't. I think it sort of is a port more than you're giving it, or I think it sort of is a port more than you're letting on, to be completely honest, because when you say that, it makes me feel like they do expect you to have some level of experience in the game, or perhaps they just lost track of that at some point. But when you say this is the AAA port, but no, this is AAA and it's not a full port because it's a new experience and it's different than those other games, it seems like the scenario that you're speaking of right now doesn't really add up to that, though.
That's my problem. This is the problem that I've got, right? So I'll try to clarify it a little bit easier. This is a wholly unique experience. The gameplay is fantastic. It is one of the best VR titles I've ever played. However, because they used the same cases as the original, if you've played the non-VR version, you're not going to have a good time, or as good of a time, because you will already know the solutions to these cases. However, at the same time, so because of that, I feel like it is clearly designed for people who have never played the game. However, at the same time, it doesn't give you enough of an explanation of some of the key core mechanics, such as interrogations, and therefore seems to assume that you have already played the game. It is a disconnect, because half of the game says this is brand new and you should never have played the game before, whereas the other half of it is saying this is not new and you should have played the game already.
Yeah, that really just makes my mind do backflips, but I totally get what you're saying and why that is certainly a problem that is there. But deep down, when we take that problem off and we look at this game at its core and we see what it has to offer, it looks like it's still really well fleshed out and it's a really fun experience. How much do they want for this AAA VR title?
This is $30. You can probably find it for $25 on sale sometime, or on a non-Steam site. There's plenty of those out there. Because this is a AAA title, you're going to find it everywhere. It uses a Rockstar Social Club, so you could probably find it on there too. It's a $30 title. At $30, I wholeheartedly 100% recommend it if you've never played the game or you don't remember the game. But it's because of that disconnect and that dissonance that at $30, I don't know that I could recommend it if you recently completed L.A. Noire, or you really loved L.A. Noire, or you want to do all of the missions of L.A. Noire. If you've never played it, you've never experienced it, I wholeheartedly recommend it. It's the best VR title out there right now.
Yeah, the only problem with the $30 that I have is the 7 cases, because I fear, I hope this isn't the case, but what if in the future they try to release the other cases as DLCs, and then it isn't a $30 title, it gets up and it's like a $60 title, which I've seen that sort of thing happen plenty of times before, and at that point I would be frustrated, and in hindsight would look back at myself and feel guilty for recommending it for $30. But at the same time, I haven't played it, I want to play it, and I think I represent all of those VR players out there who have no experience with L.A. Noire. I'm going to pick it up for $30, and I could recommend it for that price. Perhaps for people like you, I feel a little more on the fence about it.
And that's the thing. There's this disconnect, and I really have to... I feel like I'm overstating it a little bit, but at the same time, I feel like it has to be said, there is absolutely a disconnect here. If you've never played L.A. Noire and you jump into this game, you're going to have moments where you go, they never explained how to do this. Why don't I know how to do this? How come I wasn't aware that this thing was going to happen? And that's a problem. Whereas at the same time, if you've already played L.A. Noire and you really enjoy it and you remember the gameplay, and that's the biggest part, is if you remember the gameplay, you're going to get into this and you're going to go, I have nothing new except for this cool experience that I'm having, which is really neat, but I already know everything. I already know that I have to go get this, get that, talk to this person, talk to that person, and I've done it. So there's no new exploration. There's nothing fantastic and fresh for the people who have already played it. And there's not enough explanation for the people who haven't already played it. It's so incredibly difficult for me because I feel like this is the first really fantastic VR title that I've ever played. I recommend it to everybody, but it's just so hard because I feel like it's letting down both sides of the coin. Just a little bit.
You've explained that point pretty well, to the point that I'm confident in agreeing with you on that. It still looks super fun, and at the end of the day, that's my biggest concern. But like you said, it does feel like it's in the middle of providing an awesome experience to those that have played it, or an awesome experience to new players. And what they've done is kind of give people that have already played it the short end of the stick, but also taken away some of the stuff like, I've never played it before, I'm gonna need a tutorial. So that's kind of taking away from the new experience for me as well. So I'm left feeling like I'm going to recommend this for $30 because you keep saying over and over, it's the best title I've played in VR. I think that alone deserves the $30 price tag. As long as you keep in mind those things that we've just discussed, that way you'll be prepared for it when you do pick it up and you start playing it.
So let me know what you think if you've played this before. Were you somebody who had already played it before and you felt like you weren't getting enough new story out of it? Or were you somebody who had never played LA Noire and you felt like they didn't explain enough of the core mechanics to you? I'd really like to know down below. Also, would you agree with me that this is, if not the best, then one of the best VR titles in possibly ever? And it's just such an incredibly fantastic AAA, and I feel like this is really AAA VR experience. Let me know down below. I will tell you one little hint if you've never played this game, and that is that your book has 2 pages in an interrogation. You should use them both. That's my hint.
Hint, no spoilers.
If you like it. If you don't like it, don't like it. But if you did like it, go ahead and watch another one up there in the corner. And as always,
We'll see you guys on the next one.